the crowd is going wild. A brand new season, that championship style. Big plays are coming, the rivalry's real. Get ready for that Pigskin Frenzy feel. It's college football, yeah, you know the deal. This is Pigskin Frenzy. Pigskin Frenzy.
Man, I'm going to tell y'all what. It is a bittersweet day. It really is. It's a bittersweet day. And when I mean bittersweet, we've been doing spring football coverage for the past couple of months. And when you're so used to doing something, you're like, okay, now what? But the thing is, though, we have that little small gap where we can create some good content and some good episodes for you guys. And not only that, what comes after that is the media days, the conference standing projections that everyone asks for. And not only that, football season then starts to roll around. And then you're like, okay, we're pumped again, right? So, but the bitter part of it, that's the sweet part of it. The bitter part of it is you're so used to doing spring football for a little bit and you're so used to hearing about it, you're like, man, it's one of those bittersweet things to end that we, spring football's over. Now we get a little bit of another break from it, right? So it's like, darn. But guess what? It's always college football around here. So we're fired up. We're pumped. Guys, just keep on plugging in. Welcome to Pigskin Frenzy, by the way, on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Joel Norris, and whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify, Podbean, and Apple, or listening to us on our exclusive home of True Voice Digital, guys, a big thank you for taking some time out of your Thursday to just sit back, watch, and listen to some college football coverage presented by me. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Like each episode, leave comments down below. Spotify, Podbean, and Apple. All you have to do is just share around with others and follow on there as well. X and Instagram and TikTok is at Pigskin_Frenzy. You're going to just follow, like those pages there. Guys, you're going to get clips and updates for Pigskin Frenzy as well on there. You're going to get a lot of awesome stuff on there from me also. I need to be a little bit more personal on there as well. So I'll try to do that, especially next week. And I'll tell you what's going to happen next week. So our website's www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com for more on Pigskin Frenzy. Guys, we've reached the end of spring football coverage. But look, keep on plugging in because we got some exciting stuff coming up for Pigskin Frenzy. We're so excited where this show is going. We're so excited for our role in college football media as the prodigy of college football. We're so pumped. We're pumped and fired up. Guys, we're at, near 105,000 views on YouTube. Getting close to 7,500 on all audio platforms. A huge thank you to you guys each and every week for tuning in Tuesday and Thursday, if you're just listening and just watching, because it's a we show. We want to do and deliver the best content and the best ideas for you guys, and we listen to you guys. So you guys wanted Vanderbilt. You wanted us to talk about Virginia, Iowa, and Arizona. We're doing that. So we're thankful for you guys, and we're pumped up. And we're fired up that you are listening and watching because we want to deliver the best stuff for you guys. Without you guys, we wouldn't be doing this, and we would not be climbing and achieving mountains and goals doing this. So we're so pumped and fired up, and thank you guys each and every step of the way. Guys, we're so pumped as well because this is the most important thing. We're so thankful for our Lord and Savior Jesus because without him, we would not be doing this. Our mission is to glorify him across all platforms and shows because as believers of Jesus, our goal is to spread his name. We must decrease and he must increase. So we glorify him and praise him across all platforms. It's the best decision you can ever make in your life to come to know him. X, Instagram, and TikTok is at Pigskin_Frenzy. And the website's www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com. There's contact info down below on the home and about me page. If you want to contact me to talk about coming to know him, it's the best decision you can ever make in your life. We praise him and glorify him for everything. So we're so thankful for our Lord and Savior Jesus. Man, spring football coverage is concluding, but never the fear. Why would I say never the fear? I don't know why. Ignore what I just said. Don't fear is the main thing I was going to say. Don't fear. We are going to provide the best stuff for you guys. So we're going to try to keep on doing that. So keep on plugging in. Subscribe if you want to hear me say blubbers like never the fear. If you want to hear me talk about college football in general, just keep on plugging into Pigskin Frenzy. Just keep on doing it. We're fun around here. And we are all about the sport, and we love this sport. Unless the sport starts to make us a little, there's some stuff in the area that needs to be fixing. That's a whole nother rant. But keep on plugging in on all platforms. Last spring football coverage episode, Momentum Edition. 4 teams that ended the season last year with momentum going into 2026. And they're all from each of the Power 4 conferences. One from each Power 4 conference. One from the SEC, ACC, Big 12, Big 10. Vanderbilt, Virginia, Iowa, Arizona all ended the season on a high note. And now, if you don't count bowl season, now Vanderbilt lost to Iowa, Arizona lost, Virginia won, so they ended the season on a high note. Iowa won, beat Vanderbilt. So I'm talking about the regular season. If you include the regular season, they all ended kind of on a high note. And no one really kind of expected them to end on that note. So that's why we're talking about these teams, because they're kind of important going into 2026, especially the one we're about to get into now, because we're going to dive into the SEC first. So the SEC first is very interesting. We're going down to Nashville, Vanderbilt. Year one, when they beat, not really year one of the Pavia era, they ended up beating Alabama, and you're thinking, oh, snap. This team's awesome. They ended up losing a close game to Texas, and they're like, oh, snap, man. This team's actually pretty solid. Okay, is this a one and done? That's what everyone was thinking. Year 2 rolls around. No, it's not a one and done. They end up losing a close game to Alabama, lose a close game to Texas, but they end up beating the brakes off of LSU, beating the brakes off of Tennessee to end their regular season as well. They had their first 10-win season in program history last year. So no, it wasn't a one and done. Problem is, though, Pavia was a Heisman finalist. He's no longer there. Eli Stowers in the NFL with the Philadelphia Eagles. He's no longer there. The Mackey Award winner, he's no longer there. So you're looking at that and you're thinking, okay, can we keep up the momentum of being a football school? Now, they're making some high-profile recruits, i.e. Jared Curtis going from, he was committed to Georgia, ended up decommitting and flipping and signing with Vanderbilt, and going to Vanderbilt, staying home because he's a Nashville, Tennessee native. So you look at that and you're thinking, okay, we got some high-profile recruits coming in. Can we keep up the momentum of being that football school and being that team that, hey, we're not playing second fiddle to anybody anymore. We're not going to be at the bottom of the totem pole in the SEC and football-wise. We are going to be the, contending and trying to work at contending in this conference. Is the new era of Vanderbilt going to continue, and are they going to be at the top of the, I would say top of the food chain, but trying to be at the top of the food chain, contending? Or are they going to go back down to where they were? Can they keep up the momentum? That's why we're doing this. So, big question was the quarterback battle. Blaise Berlowitz was the backup last year. He had some playing time when Pavia was out for a little bit on certain drives, and he looked okay. He wasn't like Pavia, but he looked all right. And then you get Curtis, who in high school was killing it in high school. But then you look at the competition now, and you're like, okay, who's going to start? Because Curtis is showing a lot of promise, or going into the practices, and then you look at Berlowitz, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, he's got a little bit more of experience than Jared Curtis, right? So it's just one of those things that you got to monitor and evaluate and see and look. Because when we have, and we're going to give you our analysis on it, maybe a little bit surprised on what I'm going to say, but we'll see. So that offensive line, this is what I want to see in the spring outlooks, by the way, for Vanderbilt. Offensive line, stability there. I wanted to see what was going on with that. I wanted to see what was going on the pressure, defensive line pressuring. I want to see what was going on with the defensive line. The line of scrimmage play, probably, I know the quarterback competition is a little bit important, but if you're talking about what's a key area of importance for Vanderbilt, man, the offensive line and the defensive line is very important for Vanderbilt, because if they can get that improved, they can start to gel a little bit more. Otherwise, they're probably going to take a step back, and you don't want that. So we're going to see what happens there. That's what I wanted to see as well. I think fundamentals of special teams was a key one for me. but mainly the line play and the quarterback competition. So here we go. Let's rock and roll with our spring results. Positives, negatives, what I think needs to be improved. And the way I made my face there, I was like, from the spring game, let me just put it this way. I feel like there's more improvement that needs to be made coming up. And overall, I think Vanderbilt might take a step back this season. I'm not saying permanently. I'm just saying a little bit this season. They may drop a little bit. I'm not saying they're going to win or lose games. I think they're going to win some games. I'm not saying that. But they might take a little bit of a step back. I may be wrong. Look, I've been wrong before. I've been wrong plenty of times. And I'm not going to say or, shy away from that. But from what I'm seeing during the spring game and what I saw during the spring, I'm looking at it, and there's some work that needs to be done. And Clark Lee admitted it. Head coach Clark Lee admitted it. And we're going to talk about that. Let's talk about the line. So, the offensive line first. The offensive line is, I will say, positive, negative. Positive is they showed some physicality. In terms of they can be physical. The negative part of it is the strength of that behind that wasn't there. So that's kind of the negative there. They showed a little bit of physicality, but behind that, there wasn't a really great strength on the line, right? They're brand new. And I think that or as everybody's starting to use the word now, they're pretty green. Everybody's using that phrase now, so they're green. Let me just put it that way. They're kind of new. And I think that's the negative thing that you can look at with Vanderbilt. So, overall, right? I think that's kind of the positive, negative there. If you're counting on the offensive line, right? Excuse me. If you look at the defensive line, I think that's another really negative. I will say defensive line pressure as in pretty much just rushing the quarterback as the edge in general. I think rushing the quarterback is kind of, I will say, it's either A, they really work too hard to do it, and you got to work hard to do it. I'm not saying that, but work too hard, overthink it a little bit, and or they kind of just don't really do it. They kind of take a step back and kind of fold a little bit. So it's no in between. It's no just a normal, let's try to get to the quarterback. It's either they overdo it or they severely underdo it. So I think they need to improve on a balance of trying to generate that pressure and to trying to rush the quarterback. I think that's really the only negative. That's another negative that I have about Vanderbilt right there. So line play does need to get better a little bit for Vanderbilt. I think special teams is getting there. Let me just put it that way. That's a positive for me for Vanderbilt. I think the fundamentals are getting there. Still needs to improve a little bit, but the positive is the special teams is getting there, and that's pretty good for Vanderbilt. I think their special teams was good last year. I think it needs to improve a little bit this year, going into this year, but I think you'll get there. So that's a positive for me there. The main thing is the quarterbacks. I want to see what's going on with the quarterbacks between Blaze and Jared. Jared Curtis, to me, if I had to place money on who the starting quarterback will be for Vanderbilt in 2026, I'm going to probably go with Jared Curtis. I will say this, though. I think as a true freshman, and it's going to happen because he's a true freshman. He needs to improve on accuracy. He needs to improve on decision-making. Showed a lot of mistakes in the spring game. That's okay. Because he's a true freshman. The only way for him to clean that up is to get him in there into play and get him experience and get him reps. That's the only way to do it, is to just let him keep going. He showed really good arm strength, so that's a positive there. So there's a positive and negative there. He showed really good arm strength, so I like that. He showed athletic playmaking ability when he could. So that's a really positive there. That's a good positive there. I will say decision-making wasn't there, and I will say the accuracy was the problem. for Jared Curtis. That's it. But those are common mistakes a true freshman will probably make, and that's fine. He just needs to improve a little bit and get experience. Blaze just needs to be a little bit consistent more. I think he's a little bit too inconsistent. He's good with the accuracy, good with the decision making, and then another play, he's not. He's kind of hot and cold. So just being consistent for Blaze. And I think that's a positive and kind of a negative there for both. So the quarterback competition is taking shape. I think accuracy and decision making for Jared Curtis is a primary key there. But if I had to bet money right now, I would think Jared Curtis will probably start week 1 for Vanderbilt. I just think he's their guy. So overall, my spring result grade for Vanderbilt as we move on. I think my spring result grade for Vanderbilt, I would say about a B minus, teetering towards C plus, probably a B minus, only because, and maybe even teetering towards a C plus, maybe. And I will tell you, only because there are some significant areas where they need to improve. I think the offensive line and the defensive line and the line of scrimmage overall is the one thing they need to improve on. Rushing the quarterback and protecting and run blocking as well. I think run blocking was a little bit worse than pass protecting. So I think run blocking needs to get a little bit better. I think Jared Curtis needs to develop even though he's a true freshman, still needs to develop. I think Blaze needs to get a little bit more consistent. If he is going to be their quarterback, needs to be a little bit more consistent. I'm expecting it to be Jared Curtis, though. But overall, there's some positives there. I think they got some good receivers. I think the receiving depth is great. I think the rotation is good. I think that there are some key pieces on defense that can step up for this team, that can be playmakers for that defense, which is pretty solid. I think that the special teams is coming along as well. So those are some positives for Vanderbilt as well. Overall, it's B minus, C plus, because I do think that there are some areas they need to develop and improve on as they head into the fall, and it's looking like that it's going to take some time. Now, I'm not giving up on Vandy because anchor down. I think Vanderbilt is the new style of Vanderbilt is awesome, and I want to see Vanderbilt to continue their success. I really do. I just think that there are some areas that Vanderbilt may struggle with that could potentially bleed into the fall. And we're going to see how it happens. I don't know. I may be wrong. I just want Vanderbilt to prove me wrong. That's it. I think Vanderbilt can prove me wrong, and I hope they prove me wrong because I want to see them succeed. I really do. So that's my spring result grade on Vanderbilt, B minus. Teetering towards C plus for them. So that's my spring results on them. Moving on to the ACC, and we're talking about Virginia. Boy, did Virginia surprise me, because they did. They surprised me tremendously. Expected them to finish kind of at the bottom of the barrel last year. I keep telling this story. And then all of a sudden, they win 10-plus games, go to the ACC championship, finish as a runner-up. They win the Gator Bowl, and then in the portal, they wind up going to pretty much get the quarterback they beat in Bo Pribula from Missouri, which is pretty cool, which is pretty interesting. Then they went out and got another quarterback from Pitt, and Eli Holston, who lost his job to Pitt quarterback Mason Heinschel. So very interesting dynamic there. The quarterback competition there, both of them, who's going to be the more mobile quarterback in that situation? We probably already know the answer to that one, but who's going to be their QB1 going in to week 1? That's a big dynamic there. I think that I wanted to see what was going to happen running back wise as well. I wanted to see what was going to happen on the defense as well. I think the secondary especially continue to solidifying and just building up the secondary as well. I wanted to see that, and I wanted to see what was going on there. I wanted to see if Tony Elliott can keep up the momentum, because I really like Tony Elliott. I hope I can get Coach Elliott on here one day and talk and just discuss Virginia football and Cavalier football, man, because he's a really cool guy, really good coach, and I want the best for him. So I'm glad that they had the season they had last year. It was an awesome story last season, and hopefully they can continue that momentum going into 2026. So let's see if they can keep up that momentum as we go into their spring results. But obviously, and their spring's over, so I kind of want to see what the haps is with Virginia, right? So let's dive into their spring results and let's talk about them. The things that I liked, I will highlight mainly their running back strength. I think Zay Davis is pretty good on the ground. Peyton Lewis coming from Tennessee to Virginia, I think that's a really strong addition. I think their running back room is very bright. I think the running game is going to be very bright for them as well. I think the running game's fine. I think it's a very big positive for Virginia. I think they could be potentially top 5 in running this year if they can utilize that and rely on that heavily this year. I think if they really put their mind and focus to it, Virginia's running game could be very strong this year. So positive for me is their running game. I think that the defense has shown has improved physically. I think physicality has improved on the defense, which is pretty solid. I think that physicality they're showing. I think that they got to get better at tackling, so that's the only negative, though. I think they're bringing the physicality, as in when they come for a tackle, they're showing some fast and some hard paced, like, okay, we're going to go up and, get with them, physical. But, I think tackling could be a little bit better. Filling up the gaps could be a little bit better as well. I think the strong showing, though, pretty much physicality for that defense is a really strong showing in the spring game. So so here was the deal. Practice-wise, they were kind of a work in progress. Spring game, they looked really good. So they just got to continue putting that effort in. So I wouldn't say it's a big, big negative, because they're continuing to work on it and they are improving dramatically. But just continue to work on tackling better. I think that's a really big thing there. But overall, their defense was pretty good in their spring, and especially in their spring game. So that's a positive there. I think if we're talking about the improvements and the negatives, really, I think the wide receiver chemistry is just a little bit off. And I think the chemistry needs to be a little bit better for the wide receiver and the quarterback chemistries. That gap there. The chemistry between the wide receiver and the quarterback needs to get a little bit better. That's really kind of the negative thing that I think, and that's going to be huge, especially if that bleeds into the fall, because they need that for their offense. I think consistency at the quarterbacks for both of them are a little bit inconsistent. Let me put it that way. The consistency is a bit of an issue for both quarterbacks at this point. They're kind of neck and neck. I would think Bo Pribula will start for Virginia due to his legs and how he can improvise scrambling. But passing for both quarterbacks, especially consistently, has been kind of a stretch a little bit. So I think that needs to be worked on as they head into the fall and see if that could improve. That's really some negatives that I found there. Blocking, especially from the tight ends, was a little bit of a concern as well. I think that needs to be improved a little bit. But I think that can get fixed as they continue their reps, really. So those are some of the negatives and the positives that I think I've seen for Virginia in their spring game, and what I've liked and what I kind of think they need to work on as well. So overall, my spring result, great for Virginia. I would say just a solid, probably B-, maybe just a B-. I think that there are some positive things like the running game for Virginia, like the defense in how physical they are. I think the secondary is being built up a lot better as well. I think the quarterback competition is kind of neck and neck right now. I think they both need to be a little bit more consistent, especially throwing the ball. Bo Pribula, if I had to bet money, I think Bo Pribula will probably be the starting quarterback, but we will see. I think throwing the ball, I think needs to be better on both the court, and I think the chemistry for the wide receivers as well needs to be a little bit better as well. But overall, and blocking, especially for the tight end areas and those gaps as well. But overall, I think if they can clean those up, Virginia's probably going to be a top 10 to top 5 team in the ACC. I really do. I think they can be a solid team. I think they're building, and I think what they're doing there is pretty solid. So you might be surprised where I put them in the ACC conference standing projections. Just a spoiler there. So overall, B- for me for Virginia as they head into the fall. That is their spring results for them. So that's my spring results for Virginia. Let's dive into 2 more, and let's dive into the Big Ten. Go to Iowa City. The Iowa Hawkeyes, man. Kirk Ferentz entering his, I believe it's, 27th? If I'm not mistaken, his 27th year, maybe? If I'm not mistaken. He's been there. Kirk Ferentz has been there for forever. So anyway, he's been there forever. So he's entering his second year, or his other year, rather, as Iowa head coach. And there's no more Mark Gronowski. I think that's a big thing there. No more Mark Gronowski. And he kind of filled that dynamic with, he threw the ball well, but he also ran the ball very well as well. So with the legs, he kind of filled that gap there. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be very interesting to see who is the starting quarterback there going into 2026. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. They lost a little bit on the D-line as well, and I think that was kind of a concern for me during my spring outlooks for Iowa as well, and that what I wanted to see there for them in 2026 was their D-line and how they were going to be reconstructed and bolstered up a little bit. So that's another thing that I wanted to see as well. So quite a few things for Iowa, and we're going to get started here, but man, Iowa was a very underappreciated team last year. And they ended up shocking a lot of people and winning the Rely Quest Bowl. I believe having a 9-win season last year. So can they keep up that momentum, try to get to 10 wins maybe, and keep up that momentum and try to contend at the top of the Big Ten? We'll see what happens. But quarterback competition is a primary thing. Defensive line reconstruction and on the line of scrimmage is a primary thing right now for them as well. So let's get started on what I liked and what I didn't like. So what I liked, I do like the heart that Helinski and Brown are showing. I think that they are trying to practice with passion. I think that the heart of the team, especially on the offensive side of the ball between both of them, they are trying their best out there to become QB1 for that team. I think the passion that they're showing is a very strong indicator that, hey, we have the potential to be a very good asset to the team, right? So, yeah, I think that's a very positive thing there. I think that their running game is solid. I think they are very physical in terms of running the ball. That's a positive for me there. I think special teams kicking, as in like field goal kicking, is good for them. I think that's a positive there. We're going to get to the other side of the thing of the special teams as well, but I think that's a positive there for me for Iowa there. So those are some of the positives that I'm seeing from Iowa, and what I've seen from their spring game is there. I think some of the negatives that I think they need to work on and improve on. I think separation between the quarterbacks. I think there is some inconsistency between both Helinski and Brown, and that's okay. I mean, they just need to get more reps. I think that if it bleeds in deeper into the fall, as in like closer to game time, that may be a primary cause of concern. But right now, as they train and get better, they'll have time to get better over the coming months. Just don't let it bleed in too deep into fall camp. And then that will be a primary cause of concern, because then you start playing the 2-quarterback system, and it's like, who can be consistent enough to run Tim Lesser's offense? That's the whole dynamic there. Who is consistent enough to run Coach Tim Lesser's offense? That's all we want to see for Kirk Ferwentz's quarterbacks there. So consistency there. I think the reconstruction of the defensive line is going to be a little bit harder than most people think. I think they lost guys like Aaron Graves coming in, or going out, Aaron Graves. They lose guys like that on the defensive line. They are reconstructing it with transfers like a Kamari Brown or a Bryce Stevenson. So those are good things. Good moves are being made. But the consistency between those two guys coming in and reconstructing the defensive line as a unit is going to be a little bit of a tougher challenge, it seems like. So that may bleed into the fall a little bit. Hopefully that gets fixed. I think it could get fixed. They just need to work on it a little bit more. I think that's one thing that we need to see a little bit better from Iowa there. Wide receiver consistency needs to be a little bit better. I think they made certain good plays, but then there were some cold plays, like hot and cold moments, where they were showing some flashiness, then they weren't. And it was just kind of hot and cold. So consistency needs to be a little bit better in the wide receiver room. I think they have the potential to be very underrated group in the Big Ten, though. They got some guys. They just need to be a little bit more consistent. That's all it is. And then last but not least, something that needs to get better is the punting. I think the punting needs to be better. Special teams punting needs to get a little bit better heading into the fall. I think the special teams kicking and like field goal kicking and place kicking overall is better. Punting needs to be a little bit better for that team as well. But overall, I think Iowa has the potential, because with the talent that they got on their roster, has the potential to be very underrated in the Big Ten. Very underrated once again, and flying under the radar once again in the Big Ten. So overall, how I evaluate their spring, you may be surprised on this after all the stuff I just mentioned. I'm going to give them a solid B, teetering towards B plus, because I think that they showed some fire in their spring. I think that Iowa showed a little bit of a fire in their spring, and they showed that we could be underrated with the roster. They do have to work on some stuff, obviously, like everybody does. But I will say this about the Hawkeyes. If they show a little bit more fire while improving on those things that they need to be improved on, Iowa can try to contend once again. So they can be right back in it in 2026. For me, B, teetering towards B plus, is suffice for Iowa. Cannot wait to see what they do in 2026. That is my spring result grade on Iowa, and I'm curious to see how they are in the fall. We're going to evaluate them a little bit more for our conference standing projections for the Big Ten. That is my spring result grade on Iowa. Last but not least is Arizona before we wrap up. The Arizona Wildcats. First year for Brent Brennan, not really the best. But then you look at year 2, and then you look at what Noah Fafita did. When he came back, he had the opportunity to transfer or go to the NFL on a couple of occasions, but he came back last year, or mainly the transfer portal last year. But he came back and balled out. And a lot of people really didn't take notice until later part of the season. Like, Noah Fafita actually was pretty good last year. Can he keep up that momentum and be one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12 and in college football once again? We'll see. Brent Brennan, 10-win year last year. Again, second season for Arizona. You know, a couple of years back, they had Jed Fish, and they had a really good year last year. In Jed Fish's last year, before he went to Washington, had a really good year with him. Brent Brennan comes in, not really the best year, but rebuilding phase. They go into year 2, and they're one of the best teams in the Big 12. A few moves that would have been made, and a few losses that would have happened to BYU or at the top of the mountain, Arizona's probably facing Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship. So we'll see what happens. Their schedule fits nicely. Their roster is, while they do face some significant turnover through the portal edition, and they have some portal acquisitions, and they have a lot of guys going to the draft, and they went to the draft. But they didn't lose a lot of guys out from the portal, which means Brent Brennan's vision is working in their heads, and they're thinking, we can do something here. So we're going to see what happens with Arizona. I cannot wait to see what happens with Arizona. So with Arizona and some of the positives we go into their spring, some of the positives. So I think that if you look overall at the positive aspect of it, I think Noah Fafita is balling out. He balled out during the spring. I think there's nothing wrong there. I think running the football, that's another positive thing. I think Noah Fafita, there's nothing to really worry about him, though. I think if you, by the way, changed his number to number 1. He's number 1 now. So Noah Fafita, good with throwing the ball, good with moving around in the pocket. Noah Fafita is a really good quarterback, very underrated quarterback, probably one of the best in college football going into 2026. Very underrated. Let me just put it that way. A lot of people aren't talking about him, but I would keep an eye out on him in 2026. So you got him. He's a positive there. I think running the ball is very good as well. I would think Kedrick Riscano will most likely be the primary back for them in terms of running the ball, because he looked really good running the football as well. I believe Quincy Smith was also really good as well, but it's looking like Quincy Craig was really good as well. Quincy Craig was good, 5'10", 189-pound redshirt senior. He was really good. But I think Kedrick Riscano is probably taking that leap as the RB1 and the primary running back after Ismail Mali has left for the NFL. So Kedrick Riscano, probably the primary running back. That's what I wanted to see, who was going to be the primary running back for them. Riscano is probably going to be their guy. I think if you look at what needs to be built more negative wise really for them, I think the receiver depth needs to be bolstered up a little bit, build some depth at the receiver position. You have Trey Spivey, Gio Richardson there as well. Just got to keep on building that receiver depth, for Arizona. So I think the receiver depth needs to happen, needs to be all right. So you got that. I think they have a very young and underrated tight end room, which is a positive note. They just need to improve in a lot of areas, including in the passing game, you need to include their roles a little bit and get better at the passing attack. So you got that. I think those are some of the negatives there. Overall, there's not really a lot of negatives for this team because I think if you want to include tempo, getting better at speed, I think that would be a good option for Arizona. If you want to look at it in that regard, I think Arizona needs to get better at speed. Overall, secondary replacement probably needs to be develop a new secondary and bolster that up in the spring. That's kind of a positive and a negative, really. I mean, overall, if you look at the whole landscape of Arizona, I think they're in a slight rebuilding, kind of retooling and maneuvering, but they have some of the pieces where they can make a run at everything in the Big 12. So it's kind of in an interesting spot with Arizona if you look at it. So that's how I kind of look at their spring and evaluate their spring. They're in a retooling in certain groups phase and certain positions type phase, but they still got some of the pieces there to make a run and to not really fall too far behind. So secondary replacement needs to be looked at as they head into the fall. Get a little bit more fast, I would think, and speed up the tempo on offense. I think coverage technique needs to be a little bit more redefined. Other than that, they have some pieces on this team where they could be a very underrated, kind of the itch you can't seem to try. Like you keep scratching that itch, but you can't get rid of it. And I think that's what Arizona can be to teams in the Big 12. So overall, in my honest thoughts on Arizona and my spring result grades on them, I would say probably a solid B. Probably a solid B. I don't think they are phenomenal yet by no means, but I think they have the potential to be a really solid football team that, like I said, you want to try to you're trying to catch that itch and you're scratching it, but you can't seem to really get rid of that itch. So to me, overall, Arizona is the itch you can't seem to get rid of. And I think that Arizona can be that team for teams in the Big 12. We'll just have to see what happens with Arizona. So overall, that's my spring result grade for them. Man, that is my spring results for Vanderbilt, Virginia, Iowa, and Arizona. Guys, we are out of time. So a big thank you for taking some time out of your Thursday to just sit back, watch, and listen to some college football coverage and some spring football coverage presented by me. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like each episode, leave comments down below. Spotify, Podbean, and Apple. All you got to do is just share around with others and follow on there as well. Catch us on True Voice Digital, and that's our exclusive home, inspiring faith-based content and unfiltered analysis from me as well. There's also our socials. Don't forget that X, Instagram, and TikTok is at Pigskin_Frenzy. Follow and like the pages there. Our website's www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com as well. Guys, a huge thank you for tuning in each and every Tuesday and Thursday. And guys, we're so thankful. And guys, not only that, thank you for tuning in for the past couple of months for doing spring football coverage with us. It is now officially over. 2026 spring football coverage for Pigskin Frenzy is now officially in the books, and we are so thankful that you have tuned in for the past couple of months as we worked hard with our spring football coverage, providing the best content for you guys. So big thank you for tuning in each and every week. Guys, so next week, going to be very interesting. Next week, well, tomorrow, I'm actually leaving. I'm actually going on a week vacation going towards the Caribbean. So I'm going to have a cruise for the first time in my life. I've never been on a cruise before. So I'm very interested in that. And I am going on a cruise for the first time in my life. So a vacation in the middle of the ocean. So next week, which is, I would believe, so May 7th. So May 12th, Tuesday, May 12th, and Thursday, May 14th. No Pigskin Frenzy at all next week. We will return on May 19th with a very special interview and kicking it back into high gear. Very special interview with Kentucky football sports information director and SID and director of athletic communications for Kentucky, Susan Lax, will join us on May 19th episode of Pigskin Frenzy. When we get back from our cruise, we will have that interview. We're going to tell the story of the SID and what an SID does on the day-to-day. Very interesting role and how they kind of help us with our, college football media and help us with our content creation for guys who want to interview coaches and players. They're going to talk to us about what they do in the day-to-day because their job is so important, and I want you guys to tune into that episode on May 19th. And then after that, we will have we'll kick it into high gear for more Pigskin Frenzy as the weeks go on leading up to our conference standing projections. So we'll return May 19th. So no Pigskin Frenzy next week. I'll keep you up to date. I'll probably post some stuff on the cruise. Why not? I'll post some stuff, some pictures of what's going down on the cruise. I've never been on one, so we'll post some content there as well from the phone. But no episodes next week. We will return on May 19th with that special interview with Kentucky football SID Susan Lack. So until then, keep up to date on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Pigskin_Frenzy. Follow and subscribe on all platforms, including YouTube, Podbean, Spotify, and Apple. And catch us on True Voice. We will see you Tuesday, May 19th. I'm Joel Norris, signing off. We'll see you May 19th. Special interview. Do not miss it. We'll return with Pigskin Frenzy then. For everybody out there, we love you all. We're praying for you all. As always, stay the course.